Hey guys, I'm happy that you made it to part two. In part two, we're gonna go over the top of the camera. So all the buttons and functions right here on the top of this camera. So let's go on and dive right into it. So let's go over a few things right here. This is really simple. On and off button is right here. Boom, boom. Again, there's that wheel that we talked about at the very front right here. That controls my f-stop, but you can change it to shutter, or ISO, or multiple other things. We're going to talk about that in a future video on how to actually go in and customize this camera, because I have my camera extremely customized for wedding videography. Also, just to let you know, if you see this right here, this is actually aligned exactly where your sensor's at. So if you were to open up this cap right here, this would align exactly where your sensor is at in your body. That helps people. You do have a hot shoe here. Hot shoe versus cold shoe. Cold shoe, you slide it in. There's no electrical connection, where a hot shoe actually allows you to plug something in that's proprietary for Sony, like a flash that is made, and it will actually connect and talk to that. So that's the difference between a hot shoe and cold shoe, just to let you guys know. You have your EV right here. So depending on if you're changing your EV, which is very important for some situations. When we shoot S-Log2, we always want to be +2, so that when we color grade, it's a lot easier. But you also can set up some other settings that will allow you to do your +2 through here, and it will kind of monitor it that way instead of us manually doing it. I can be like, I want to be always at +2, and that is if I'm using some of my automatic settings here. Now we have custom function 1 and 2, so I'm able to set like ISO, really I'm able to set a plethora of things to custom 1 and 2, which makes things super easy depending on what I'm shooting. So if I'm doing, let's say, photo or video, depending on what I need in these, I can just hit this button and then I can use the dial down here, or really the dial down here to actually change things. Like if I had ISO set here, I could hit that, custom 1, and then change my ISO. So that makes it really easy, so you can actually customize these. You have 4 custom buttons, and we're going to go over the back of the camera here in a minute and show you what those 4 are. So let's look at the dial itself right here and go over everything that does. As well, you have what's called a diopter here. You'll be able to get a better look of it once we look at the back of the camera. But if you wear glasses and when you're looking through your viewfinder here and you're like, man, this looks really blurry, use your diopter, adjust this diopter, and it will physically, for nearsighted or farsighted, it will try to adjust by moving this wheel right here. It will adjust so that you can actually look through the viewfinder and the digital viewfinder, and so everything will look clear and sharp to you. So just to let you know, and we'll get a better look at it at the back. I also do not keep my eyepiece on. It gets in the way more than it doesn't get in the way, so I just went on and took that off, but that slides right off. So all you have to do is just push up, take it off. It's really simple. You have this dial right here. This is where I have my shutter speed set up here. So again, I have f-stop here, shutter speed set back here. This is your EV. And then let's go over this whole entire dial here. So we're in video mode right now. If we switch to 2, I have this set up to 4K video at 24p. And I've already got all the settings like S-Log2. So like if I'm shooting a wedding, I shoot mostly at 1080 at 60. And then like say during the ceremony, I want to go to 4K. Instead of like changing my settings for how I want my 4K set up, except for changing like f-stop, ISO, and aperture, where those need, depending on the scene, they need to be changed for the lighting. I'll just switch to here, boom. I'm already in 4K. All I have to do is really usually just change my ISO, because I already have the shutter and aperture usually kind of set to where I want it, but I can go in and tweak those as well. So again, if you're shooting at 24p, my shutter's at least going to be at 50. So I have that preset to just go straight to 50. And then if it's taking up too much light and I need to stop the light down, because with S-Log2, the lowest ISO you can go to is 800. I'll bring my shutter up, or my f-stop if I need to. So if I go to 1, I have set up in 1, I have 1080p at 120. So this allows me to go straight to slow motion and makes things super simple. Moving on, if we go to the M dial here, right there, that is 100% manual. And again, when you go into 100% manual, you're able to control your ISO, aperture, shutter, picture profile, picture style, whatever you want to do. You have full control over your camera in the M mode, and the S, A, and P mode, which we're going to go over now, you have a little bit less control, and let's dive right into those. So in S mode, that is shutter priority. So that means that your priority is going to be your shutter. So you choose the shutter speed you want, and then the camera will adjust the aperture setting, just to let you know. So that is shutter priority. So if you have something like you're shooting slow motion, and you know that at 120 frames per second, you want your camera to be at 240 shutter, which is double the frames per second that you're shooting. So therefore, it's going to try to adjust the aperture to compensate to give you the right lighting. If you can't do that in manual mode, or you haven't gotten there as far as your experience, throw it in shutter priority. So then we'll switch to A, which is aperture priority. Same thing as shutter priority, except that you set your aperture, and then it's going to adjust your shutter depending on what you needed. So again, you would kind of set, I want my aperture at a really low setting, so therefore it's going to set the shutter depending on what you need. Program shift mode. Program shift mode is indicated by the letter P. Settings on a digital camera. In this mode, the camera automatically selects the shutter speed and aperture for an appropriate exposure. Afterwards, however, you can simultaneously change the shutter speed and aperture settings while maintaining the exposure. So even if the shutter speed and aperture values are changed, the picture brightness remains the same. So this allows you to pretty much go from different lighting settings and try to keep that same feel and lighting if you go from inside to outside, therefore allowing your shot to look well exposed at all times. It works well sometimes and doesn't work well other times, and that's why I hardly ever go into it. I just like to manually control my settings if I can. So you have auto mode. That's exactly what it sounds like. It just automatically figures out the information that it needs on aperture, shutter, and ISO, and tries to give you the best balance, as well as white balance. So just to let you know, that's what the auto mode does. Then you have scene mode. You have a bunch of different scenes. So if we turn this on and we put it into scene mode, and we go to the back here, and what we'll do is we'll hit boom. So you have your different scenes up here. We can go to function, and we can actually go over here and change the different types of scenes, as you can see, and pick out which scene we want to use depending on what you're shooting. So it is pretty much like an automatic mode or auto mode, but kind of specific to the type of shot that you're doing. So as you can see, and if you have a non-Sony battery, it does pop this up and let you know that. I just always hit OK. I trust the third-party battery companies that I buy, but it's just giving you an error or letting you know that it's a non-Sony battery inside the Sony right there. So as you can see, if you want to do portraits, you could pick that with the scene. We could go back to function here, and so you're able to actually pick which scene you want. So that's what the scene mode does. So bringing this back in, then the very last thing on the dial is your S and Q mode. That's your slow motion mode. So it actually will go in and play back in slow motion what you just shot. So if you want to shoot at 120 and you actually want to physically see what that 120 looks like in slow motion, kind of like if you had your smartphone and you shot slow motion, it's going to give you, you're going to have that slow motion playback. That's exactly what this does with S and Q, which is fantastic. So if you're shooting at 120 in just your camera mode, switch over to S and Q, because it's going to go on and convert it to that slow motion mode, and it's going to play back in slow motion. So it's really going to let you see what you're doing as you're doing it, which is awesome. Hey guys, thanks for stopping in and watching whichever part you just finished up. As always, there is a link right over here to the side that you can click. It will pop out, and then you can actually pick which part you want to watch if you haven't finished them all. And there is going to be a link at the end of this video. If you do happen to click on that link, that does give us a little bit of commission so that we can keep making these videos. And as always, guys, I'll catch you next time, and create better. Let's go. Well, it was a lot of fun teaching you guys about this camera body. If there's other camera bodies you'd like to learn about, or other videos that you'd like to see here at Media Unlocked, please let us know, because we're here for you and we want to make content that you guys want to watch.